Okay, good morning, everybody. Or good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, we'll get that yet.
I knew I'd get you.
Yeah, Kirk sent me put a note in there that said good morning, and I sent him back a note and said, not in this time zone.
Request that before he leaves, before all this is done.
Okay, we're getting feedback from somebody. Please mute. Thank you. Okay, so we got lots of things to cover today, so I want to just get rolling along here. First of all, as always, we want to thank our sponsors, Care First Health Plan, Valley of the Sun United Way, Satellite Broadcasting Communications Association, Khajiit, Triad Wireless, and Karen Ziegler Consulting Services. So we appreciate it, and we need new sponsors. So we're going to be contacting you. You'll be getting phone calls from me this week because we need money desperately. I saw you smiling, Jonathan, when I said that.
Yeah.
You knew you were online, huh? So do we have any new people who are joining us today besides our presenters today? Do we have anybody else who's joining us for the first time? Going once, going twice. Okay. So next on the agenda, again, if you haven't done so, please take a couple of minutes to connect to our Google Doc and be able to provide your contact information. It's just helpful for people to, including me, to find you if we need to contact you. Just a reminder that we do have, if we have time today, we will do kibitzing with colleagues. Seems to be fairly popular by some people. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's just an informal gathering after the meeting. We stop recording, and people who want to stay online to chat, share information, ask questions can do that. It may be 3 people, it may be 10 people, it may last 15 minutes, it may last an hour. So it's just really informal, no presentations or anything like that. So I invite you to do that. Moving on, I didn't see, Nicole, are you online? Don't think so. She wasn't sure she could make it today. So unfortunately, several of our key people, our key resources are not going to make it today. Sandeep will not be here. Mala will not be here. But we're going to charge ahead anyway. So moving on, Kirk, since I saw your promotion there, you and Mark want to talk about the data center event coming up on Thursday, and also Mark about the roundtable. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
Go ahead, Kirk, you first. Or not.
You're muted, Kirk.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Third annual Data Center Smart City IoT Edge Summit. Same location as last year. Desert Willow Conference Center. Little behind in some of the speakers. I had kind of a personal family issue over November and December, so I'm a little behind. But everything's back on track. Good lineup of speakers. Everybody in this group should have the code for a roughly 65% discount. Might be able to squeeze a bunch of free seats by Wednesday. We'll see what's going on. We'll blast it if that's the case. Then Mark is also hosting on behalf of ATIC and AZBSN, the Arizona Broadband Stakeholders Roundtable. Over to you, Mark.
Okay. We did this last April at Kirk's conference, and I have sent out some messaging, and I just today sent out a ICS, an Outlook invite, and I'm getting a bunch of replies, mostly people that will attend. So that'll be at 4:30. It'll be hybrid on site leading into the reception, and anyone that wants to just come for that meeting and the reception, that's free to attend. versus the discounted conference for the day. And so it will be on Zoom, and I probably will have both Nicole and Sandeep briefly introduce themselves and their roles, and lead some introductions and discussions for the hour, a short period of time, and I will record that so that there's some potential follow-on use for that conversation. Thanks.
Just FYI, as Mark mentioned, as Mark and Kirk mentioned, so there's a discount code, ATIC, when you register, which basically reduces the attendance from $295 to $95. And I know that there's some individuals here who may not be able to even afford the $95. If that's the case, you can contact me and I will provide you a code for our free attendance for the whole event. So we just wanted to make that announcement. Okay, any questions or comments? Kirk, Mark, anything more?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. So moving on, Philip, you want to kind of take the next step here and talk about Philip Sang, who's the IT project manager with the Office of Digital Teaching and Learning with the Department of Education. And you have some things that you'd like to update us about, Philip.
Yeah, I actually didn't expect to be on until the latter part of the meeting.
Okay.
I
If you
was
prefer to
thinking-
go later, we can do that.
No. I'm good. So from the Office of Digital Teaching and Learning, the state has been afforded the opportunity to participate in the cyber readiness program over the last year and a half. So the governor's office is currently giving us the opportunity to demonstrate results of that program to continue the funding post 2024. So what ODTL is trying to do is capture qualitative and quantitative metrics of the success of this program so far. So we're looking for support in, gathering some KPIs. If you know anybody in the K-12 realm, to provide some qualitative or quantitative data for us to continue, we're looking to establish some focus groups and get information together to present it to the governor's office to continue past 2024.
So Philip, you might just remind people, if I remember correctly, that program is a partnership with the Arizona Department of Homeland Security. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. So there are 5 tools currently available. The 6th one is currently under review. So they provided endpoint protection, multi-factor authentication, web application firewall, security awareness training, free tools for state agencies. Obviously, everything comes at a cost, so we're just trying to be proactive in presenting, quantifiable information to the governor's office to continue the program post 2024.
So you mentioned that it's state agencies, but it also includes libraries and of course, was a state agency, Department of Ed, which obviously supports local schools.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so that funding, there was funding that came from the Department of Homeland Security to support your participation. When I say your Department of Ed and local schools, and I'm just trying to clarify, make sure I understand correctly and everybody else understands what the situation is.
Could you repeat that last part? I'm sorry, Steve.
Oh, I was just saying that I just want to make sure that we understand for everybody how that program came about, where the funding came about, and so forth.
So the funding came about through legislation, and ADE as ourselves, we're a state agency, so we fall under ADOA. But the opportunity was given for school districts who don't have the resources to participate in the program to get these tools. Looking at my former school district, Alhambra, they're saving about $100K a year just by using 2 of the tools themselves. So we're hoping to continue that to make sure everybody has the resources and continue with the resources. That way they're not onboarding and then offloading the resources they've already implemented in their school districts.
So again, Philip, just to be clear, that the funding for this project was not Department of Education funding, but Homeland Security funding. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so the question is whether that funding will continue in Homeland Security. Is that, and again, I'm just trying to
Yeah,
make sure I understand everybody understands correctly.
Yeah, so the goal is we're supporting Homeland Security in this initiative from the K-12 side to help the funding continue for Homeland Security, not for ADE or Department of Ed. It is for Homeland Security.
Okay.
Does that clarify everything?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Any questions for Philip? Okay.
I had a quick question, Steve. So
Yeah, go on,
Philip,
Lucy.
it's Lucy. I'm curious, is there a list of school districts that then participated in that exercise and training with you so that we can help you be like, okay, you got Sunnyside covered, TUST, or did everybody receive it and now you're just looking for reactivation and feedback from those participating schools?
So I know Department of Homeland has a list themselves. I don't know if I'm allowed to share that or send that out. I would have to ask for clarification and permission from them. So.
And then this is Mark, I have a question. Philip, I see in the governor's budget, just a proposal, of course, to the legislature that there's a specific $5 million allocation to support the development of fast and reliable broadband services in schools. Now, 5 million isn't a lot of money, but I wonder if you are familiar with perhaps a specific targeted purpose for that requested allocation.
For the 5 million, I do not have information on that. That doesn't.
Okay. I
That's not-
understand.
I'm going to talk about that later, Mark. I have a number of things in the governor's budget regarding broadband.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. If we don't have anything else, then I want to get into talking a little bit. We've mentioned in the last couple of meetings that we're working on updating the AZBSN plan. And so I've been working a lot. Unfortunately, John and Karen, due to family and traveling issues, have not been available very much. But I have been working with Jan Schiller. Jan, are you online? Yes, she's not online. Well, anyway, so I started working on a portal for this planning process, and I'm going to walk through it. It's still a work in progress, but it will have all of the information. What we're trying to do is to have as much work done in advance before we start bringing everybody to the table, so that we can make this process as simple and painless as possible. So I'm going to share that portal with you and kind of walk through tentatively what the process is. And so this is all still tentative, but I just want to make sure that we kind of touch base here a little bit. So this is just an introduction that just talked about that we created the task force. We did a digital access strategy report back in November in 2020, and now we're going to try and do an update. Now that we have a new governor, new state school superintendent, new Arizona legislature, and other state and local leadership, that we felt it was probably time. And then, of course, we have the broadband office, and then we also have all the BEAD and digital inclusion funding that's coming. So there's lots of things that are in play. So we felt it was time to begin to update the plan. So our planning is going to include two things: review and assessment of the 2020 plan, what's been accomplished, what still needs to be done, and then recommendations for 2023 through 2025. And the intended audience, so people have asked several times, so who is this for? So just like we did with our original report, state and local government, business and industry, rural communities, economic development, education, healthcare, public safety, and libraries, nonprofit organizations, telecommunications and technology companies, really just about anybody, but those are certainly the key people that we're going to be focusing on. And just to recap, the strategy is designed to provide equitable digital inclusion services and resources for schools, universities, community colleges, homes, libraries, healthcare facilities, businesses and communities to support education, healthcare, community services, and economic development and more. So, by the way, if you have any questions as I go through this, just let me know. So part of the plan, the document that we're going to produce will have a brief summary about BEAD and digital equity funding, what it is, how it can be used, how it's going to be used, the whole process of how that's going to be rolled out and managed by ACA. So we need to include that section. The report tentatively will include an executive summary, background, how we're going to approach this, the challenges, recommendations, what needs to be overcome, recommendations, progress since 2020, again, what we've accomplished. When I say we, it's the state and many of our, and all of our partners here, what's been accomplished in the state in the past couple of years. And lots, as you all know, certainly has happened with COVID. Again, recommendations for 2023 through 2025, call to action, next steps, and possibly some appendices. So that's tentatively what's going to be included in the report. Any questions or comments about that? Okay, moving on. So we have 3 leaders who have stepped up and really appreciated. Unfortunately, they've had some family health issues and so forth. But John Kelly, who you all know is principal with Tri-Advocates, longtime partner with us and collaborator. So John has stepped up to be a leader of this process. Karen Ziegler. Karen, are you online? I know she's had some family challenges and is not available. And Jan Schiller, who's a partner with Berkshire Consulting. And I got to tell you, between the 3 of them, and Jan in particular, has just done yeoman's work to get a lot of stuff done in preparation for us. So here's our tentative plan to move this process along. We're going to create planning teams, and I'll tell you, which I've mentioned already. So we'll be creating planning teams. I'm now recruiting and want to confirm team leaders and champions. If any of you are interested in leading, anybody can participate, and I'll talk about this more later, but anybody can participate in any and all the teams. But I am looking for team leaders for each of those teams, or champions who will lead the process. I want those teams to be led by them, not me. And so we're looking for champions to do that. Some people have already stepped up and offered, and so forth. Okay, I've working on developing the portal page, and I want to talk some more about this page while I'm at it. So this page is going to have when all of the meetings, when meetings are scheduled, it'll be updated as the meetings are scheduled. It'll have the date and the time. It'll have the Zoom meeting link. And then we will be developing, which I'll talk about in a minute. We will have a single Google Doc split into sections for each of the teams. So we really felt that rather than having each team doing a separate document, that it would be better. So this way people can see what other teams are doing, that we would have a single doc that would be available for each of the teams. So that's the plan. There'll be a link to that document. So even if you miss the meetings, that you'll be able to provide input. The other thing I want to emphasize, and I mentioned this, I think, last time, that when we did this last time, we started out with the teams, and if people attended the first meeting, the second meeting, they got notices of future meetings. What I found was that a lot of people who wanted to participate didn't know when those future meetings were happening. So I will now be sending a notice of every meeting that's taking place, the time, place, how to log in, and all of that sort of stuff. So again, you can attend any or all of those meetings as you so choose. And so this is just an example of what's going to be there, that we'll have each of the teams with date, time, team leaders, and so forth. And then we'll have the contact for all of the team leaders as we get them confirmed. So again, this will be a place to be able to find all the information, keep up to date on what's happening. And again, we'll be sending out the notices of the team meetings as that takes place. So going back to this, so I mentioned that we're developing the portal. We're going to have a kickoff meeting with the entire group. And that means anybody who wants to participate in this task force, that's participating in the task force, and our others are welcome to participate in that process. And that first meeting that we're going to use for everybody to provide their input, Jan has done a great job of beginning to summarize the recommendations and what we've accomplished at this point in time. But we want to review that, get any input from you folks about what's been accomplished at this point and what needs to happen in the future. And then we'll be breaking up into our teams again with a key point with our champions and so forth. And then we'll have virtual sessions. Each of the teams, again, the teams will be online, so we're not going to do face-to-face, but we will have virtual team meetings as we've done in the past. And again, the Google Doc, they'll provide a summary of what all the teams are coming up with. Okay. Again, meeting announcements for all the teams, concurrent team sessions, and homework. Anybody who wants to can provide updates in that document. And then we will review the document with everybody. You'll have an opportunity to provide any input or revisions, and then we're going to do final approval and get this done. And we don't want to drag this out. We hope that once we get this all together, that we can get this done within a couple of weeks. I know that sounds like a lot, but if we have all of the pieces in place, then we can hopefully get that done. This report is going to be considerably shorter. I don't anticipate we're going to have all the appendices that we did. We're not going to do probably as much wordsmithing, but we want to get this done quickly. So again, I'm looking for champions to participate. I'll come back to that in a second. Excuse me. So the tentative teams are broadband and connectivity, mapping. Maybe I'm not sure that I'm convinced that we need to do another mapping team, and I'd be glad to hear your input about that. Cybersecurity, community and tribal planning, schools and libraries, digital equity, digital inclusion, healthcare and telemedicine, and funding. And again, the last time we did this funding, well, lots of funding is coming down the pike, that we really wanted to talk about what other funding besides the government funding. Are there foundations? Are there other sources of funds that may be helpful? So that's tentatively the list of teams. Any comments, thoughts? I know last time we added some things, but we don't want to get too many teams. That a lot of things, you know, I know people mentioned seniors and workforce development, and I think all of those kinds of things fall under any or all of these teams. So we didn't want to create separate teams for those. Any other thoughts about teams that we should be considering?
Steve, in terms of mapping, I think there probably still is some need for it. It can be updated using some of the latest census data, the ACS data, as well as the ACP data. So I think some of that could be mapped out. But it could be a lot limited compared to what it previously was.
And Paul, you weren't on the last call, I don't think. But there is actually a team of people meeting through being led by the land department, and most of the state agencies, including many people who are part of this team of this task force, are participating on that. So I know Mala's there, Sandeep is there, Janet, I believe you're participating in that group. And actually the leader of that group, I don't know if she's here today, also is going to be participating in the task force. So the question is, do we need to have a separate group, or do we just provide our input into that group?
Providing input is probably a good idea. I'll connect to that group. That was the one meeting I missed.
Yeah,
So I will connect with them.
sounds good. So anyway, any other thoughts about teams? Okay, so here's what we're charging the teams to do. What do you perceive are the major digital access, digital inclusion needs, such as internet access and devices, as well as training, funding, and technical support? What are the issues and the barriers? what specific strategies, initiatives, resources, partnerships, technologies, or opportunities can we recommend to help address these needs? If we can determine what specific funding do we need? And who else needs to be involved on the team? And again, that's going to be an open process. So just for example, from last time we did this, here's what the charge was for the educational libraries. What are the digital access, digital inclusion needs, such as internet access and devices, as well as training, funding, and technical support are needed for libraries and library patrons, public and private K-12 schools, community colleges, universities, students, families, faculty, and community. What are the barriers? And again, what specific strategies, initiatives, resources, and partnerships, technologies, or opportunities can we recommend? And then the same thing for communities, basically the same thing. So what are the digital access, digital inclusion needs, such as internet access and devices, as well as training and funding to support community needs, such as small businesses. Thank you, John. I know you can read. As well as business owners and so forth. So anyway, that's kind of what the charge is. And again, the meetings are going to be open and all team meeting announcements will be sent to everybody. So that's the tentative process plans of what we're trying to accomplish with this process. So feedback, comments, what's your thoughts? Not hearing anything. Sounds like it's a, yes.
I have
go
a
ahead.
super minor thing, and this is just the English major in me coming out, but we should make sure that the BEAD acronym is capitalized uniformly throughout the webpage.
Good point. That's easy fix. Anything else? Any other feedback?
I think John makes a really important point that we also really want to share where we've come, what we've done in the last 2 years as we plan where we're going forward.
Yeah, well, that's what I mentioned, Janet, is that the first kickoff meeting is going to be just that. As I said, Jan Schiller is in the process of summarizing a lot of that at this point, so that we will have that ready to be discussed and reviewed, and any other input that needs to take place. But we absolutely agree that we want to review what's been done since we did that report in 2020.
Hey, Steve, do you know when the kickoff meeting is going to be?
I don't know that yet, but hopefully it will be done, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. We really need to get this process done.
Steve, I apologize. Can you explain to me exactly what you've got? A summary that says brag about accomplishments. So are we just basically collecting the information that we're gathering here, or are we actually trying to put out policy suggestions or ideas for some of these different areas?
We're absolutely going to be looking at policy and our project recommendations for any or all for all of these areas.
Okay, so I mean, my area is obviously, so let's pick cybersecurity, for example. You know, we have a team of people here that have that experience set. So are you asking us for recommendations or guidelines for schools, or you just want us to see what issues are occurring with the schools and see what need to be addressed? So basically, are we doing research by contacting the schools if we were involved in the cybersecurity side?
No,
I'm sorry, John, go ahead.
No, I think you've identified a topic that several of us identified a couple of years ago as part of the Superintendent's EdTech Task Force is something that needs to be worked on. They've set up an Office of Digital Teaching and Learning. They're participating with the Department of Homeland Security. I think that we can say that there's been some progress, but if we can have some specifics as to the fact that we need guidelines or standards that are promulgated to K-12 education as an example of a recommendation. No, I don't think we're doing the kind of research to accomplish the implementation. This is really about whoever the decision makers are, whoever the action players are. This report is to inform them about what has taken place since the last report and what still needs to be improved or worked on, because we're trying to make sure that the original report and all the work that was put in stays relevant because it is relevant, but obviously some of the recommendations are evolving. And that's at least my personal view of it as I've informed the team.
And just,
John, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
John, are you leading the cybersecurity? Is there a leader for the cybersecurity team now?
No,
Okay, so is this report available to us that we can review it and see what, see what we're walking into?
the 2020 recommendation document is definitely available, on this webpage. And then also, which I actually forgot to cover. So at the bottom afterwards, after going over the process of what we're looking at now, is to review what we did. There's some stuff on this that needs to get taken off, but there's what's in the report. This is from 2020 recommendations at a glance, and then recommendations in detail. We didn't go into, this doesn't include all of the background information and everything else. It just included the recommendations so that this would be available as we go through the planning process.
Okay, that's good. So we have a foundation to start from. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely. So,
All right,
you know,
I
looking, and that's what Jan's working on now, is that she is, again, she's working on a table that says, this is the recommendation. This is from what she knows of what's been accomplished so far, and then what needs to be accomplished. So she's going to try to summarize that. And then again, at the kickoff meeting, we're going to review that document and provide any other feedback input that people have as an assessment of what we've accomplished to date, or what needs to be done for the 2020 before we move on to looking at any new recommendations.
Okay.
Does that
thank you.
help, Roy?
Yeah, no, that's significant. I mean, obviously, we have a staff here, so we just didn't know what we would be contributing to. Specifically.
So again, you'll get more details. Jan is also working on a document that's summarizing a lot of this information. She's done an amazing job already, and I'm working with her regularly to get this all nailed down so we can move on.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
I got a question on the communities and tribal.
Yeah.
Just wondering what tribal participation do you have, or are you trying to get there? What information are you?
We have some
looking to-
folks like you folks at Alluvian who have connections with the tribes, and I don't know if he's online today. I haven't looked at all the attendance. EJ John, who is with the American Indian Institute at ASU, has been participating fairly regularly with us, and he's really kind of their lead with broadband related issues. So we always can welcome more, but I will tell you this, and I guess I want to be clear about this process. We are not going to get into the weeds. We can't say, well, we're going to do this in this community and they need money in this community. It's going to be a much broader focus. For example, with the community planning, I think we will reiterate what we've talked about before of having support for broadband action teams, now probably digital inclusion teams, and so forth, of how do we help communities, many whom have now already have broadband action teams and others who don't, of how we can help support that community planning process. We cannot get into, same thing with digital inclusion. We can't talk about, well, this program needs this money and that program needs that money. We're not getting there. That planning is going to come with the BEAD and digital inclusion, but we can provide a sort of a broad perspective of what needs to be done. So I just want to make that clear.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that.
Sure. Anything else? Okay. If there's nothing else, I'm going to move on the agenda.
Actually, Steve, I was just curious. Tico Charlie and Sonia Nez lead the broadband development for the Navajo Nation.
Okay.
They have their broadband department. Should they be included in possibly attending this meeting as an invitation?
Absolutely. So PJ, first of all, welcome back. We're glad you reconnected with us. And secondly, anybody who wants to participate is welcome to participate. All they have to do, either you or they can contact me, say, please add me to the list, and boom, they're done. They'll be invited to the meetings.
You got it, Steve. I will reach out to them and have a brief conversation.
And PJ, if you feel that I need to also contact them, I would be glad to do that. I have with several people who have joined us recently that I have done follow-up video conference meetings with them to get some input from them. So we can certainly do that if necessary.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
You bet. Anything else? I'm not following the chat, so if there's anything in the chat that that people have, please toss it out now. If you think I need to, I will review all the chat after this meeting. So if there's no more on that, I want to go back to our agenda for today. And so, Mark, this is sort of what you talked about. So I went back, I looked at some of the information from the governor's office, and there are 4 areas that I found that address broadband. One is a $50 million one-time deposit into the newly established Rural Broadband Accelerator Match Fund, which I had never heard of before. That basically,
because it doesn't yet even exist.
Exactly. Well, that's what was in the governor's budget. So I'm just telling you what it said,
Right.
but you're correct.
It will exist if the
Yeah.
it
Yes.
will exist if and only if the legislature allocates the money.
That's correct. So basically, what that match program does is that since BEAD requires 25% match and communities can't afford that match, that they then may be able to have access to that funding. That funding is available only to political subdivisions outside of Maricopa and Pima counties. And again, as John commented, you can see the details here, and this will also go out in my update to this meeting. So the second is what I think you asked about, Mark, is a one-time increase of $5 million for E-rate funding. And that is for schools and libraries. And what they project that the $5 million investment could return $60 million for schools. So anyway, that's what that $5 million is about.
That sounds like it might be money for coordinating and assisting with E-rate applications, would be my guess.
Yeah, or it could be matching. Unfortunately, Mylan, and he may join us a little later. Both Mylan and Mala are not here today.
I think John was going to kick in. Maybe.
Yeah, Mylan and I have been advocating for this, Mark, because this is what they did a few years ago, as you recall, and for certain districts, particularly those that are pursuing E-rate funding and they have a local match, this can help some of those 80-90% poverty districts close that gap and really improve their infrastructure environment for anchor institutions. And it really has done well. That fund has been exhausted, and Mylan and I have been advocating for this for the last several months. And apparently this, the Ducey administration liked it, but it was a little late for last session, and it was a carry forward into this administration. So it's a good recommendation.
Yeah.
Good
John,
stuff. Thanks, John.
I'm sorry, John, is this part of the Final Mile broadband, a Final Mile project?
No.
Funding completely separate? Okay.
Yeah, it's separate. It's E-rate, school district E-rate.
Okay.
So it's for the USAC eligible funding, not the Final Mile stuff.
Yeah, specifically asked Mylan about that today. Okay, so moving on. So another area that I found in the budget today is that there's state facility broadband deployment, $16 million in one-time funding to enhance broadband infrastructure at state facilities in rural Arizona. So that may be parks, motor vehicle division, DES offices, ADOT, et cetera, in those rural communities. So the interesting thing is, it says that the executive intends, I'm just giving you the language, the executive intends for DOA to address the most severe locations and attempt to bundle multiple state facilities to yield the largest benefit. In coordination with ACA, this initiative may be leveraged to utilize state facilities as an anchor institution to connect the remaining community. So that's interesting.
And to me, it reads a little like it might support fiber spurs off the state highway, for example,
Sure.
to, ADOT and other facilities near, within range of the highway. So fiber spurs comes to mind.
So we'll be looking at getting more details about all of this. I just pulled out the summaries that I found. So that's at least what I know. John, do you know of anything else in the state budget that we should be aware of?
Oh, so many things, but you're talking about broadband related?
Yeah, broadband or technology related.
No, I think the point that I wanted to make is, obviously this is Governor Hobbs' first budget, was assembled pretty rapidly. I think there's going to be room for some modifications and amendments to it, particularly because the Republicans have a 1-vote majorities in the House and Senate, and they're going to have their own prerogatives. There's some big ticket items that are up in the air. The governor's proposing to repeal, at least either in whole or in part, the empowerment scholarships. The legislature is proposing to eliminate the food tax on their sales tax on food. And both of those coincidentally seem to have about a $200 million impact on the overall budget. So there's some big items in the budget. I think my hope is that these items will not be perceived as partisan items, that they're for community development infrastructure. Infrastructure is pretty popular these days. And the other piece that's important to note is right now the state has a $1.8 billion fiscal surplus. That surplus is looks like it may evaporate within the next 2 or 3 fiscal years for a variety of reasons, potentially because of a recession. So there's room in the budget for one-time expenditures, but not necessarily ongoing expenditures. That's why these kinds of infrastructure investments can be pretty appealing, but it's important that the community response to these recommendations be about, the fact that this is good for the community and not just good for one partisan part of the aisle. So.
Yeah, and we don't know yet, and maybe John, you know more and can or can't talk about Department of Ed and the superintendent's office, but we know there's some things that I think we're interested in, including the continued funding for development of Final Mile. Philip talked about cybersecurity and a number of other areas that we may be interested in, which will come out of the planning process. So there's going to be a lot of other areas that we have an interest in that may or may not get any attention or funding. But anyway, that's kind of where we are.
And then Steve, I just posted, there is a bill, House Bill 2357. It's not a money bill, but it directs the ACC to regulate broadband, to conduct evaluations, to oversee generally broadband and VoIP. So that level of responsibility would have to by itself incur significant costs and coverage somehow if it were to happen, and maybe a can of worms. I'd like to hear Leah's take on it at one of our meetings. John, do you have any take on that yet?
Yeah, the sponsor is somebody that I don't think is in a position to be successful driving that legislation. I don't think there's an appetite for that. Piece.
Okay, good to know.
You never know. Yeah, never know.
Right.
Okay, anything else regarding those funding, and anything else, John, that you need to before we move on?
No, I'm good.
Okay, if not, then we're going to move on to, we have a presentation this morning or this afternoon, and I want to introduce John. How do you pronounce your last name? Tell us how, John. Are you there? Hello?
Should be there.
Sorry, I'm there. My camera was covering up my mute button, so
Okay, John, how do you
Yeah.
pronounce your last name?
Baudelaire. So
Okay.
if I was to do the French, it's Jean Boutillier, but I do not use it. And I don't. My French is long since left me. So
Okay. Well, anyway, I want to introduce John, and actually he has several of his people, and I'll let him introduce them.
Yeah.
With a company called Telesite, which is a full-service telecom and infrastructure solutions provider. I got to tell you, I had an amazing conversation with these guys and was totally impressed about the kinds of things that they're doing. One of which is some mapping things. Paul, I know you're going to be interested to hear what they have to say. So with that, John, I'm going to turn it over to you. If you have some stuff to share, I'll stop sharing and turn it over to
I'll give you guys so what I planned on doing, not take too much time, and there's a little bit of information here to digest. So what we're going to do is about, I think we allotted Steve, about 20-25 minutes or so.
Yeah.
And around there. So I'll give about a brief 5-minute introduction on myself, the two members I have on here, their roles with Telesite, and a little bit information, like I said, about 5 minutes at the most on the company. And then Kelly's got a 10-minute presentation that we put together in a video format that he's going to go through. So we'll share that as well as some information of what we do. So essentially what I am is a owner operator. I'm one of two business partners that owns Telesite. We're an Arizona-based company. We do work in offices all throughout the US, as well as in Nova Scotia, Canada as well. We have a design center there that does telecommunications and infrastructure work there.
Jonathan, John, can I interrupt for just a second? I see Mylon has joined us. And so Mylon, I don't know when you came on, if you heard what we were just talking about. Do you have any more that you want to talk about with that $5 million? We talked about it earlier today. Anything that you want to provide any detail about?
Oh, hey guys. No, Steve, I just joined, and no, I gave you everything I know this morning. It's in the proposed budget. We'll see if it makes it all the way through the budget process. We can just keep our fingers crossed, and I let everyone know that if there's anything I can do to support it, then let me know. We have lots of friends in the legislature, so I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful.
So again, Mylon, just to recap, because I didn't go into a lot of detail about how that money is going to be used. That's E-rate money. Is that match money? How is that going to be used?
It's E-rate special construction state match money. So that's the state can match up to 10%. And with that money, with that $5 million that we're projecting, we can do up to about $60 million worth of construction projects. So $1 million project will cost the state about $50,000. So it's a fantastic investment on the state side. $50,000 investment gets us a million. We'll pay for $1 million build with federal funds to a school or library, or the county-wide consortium seem to be the best bang for our buck. We hit the most areas. The Grand Canyon was a great example. We built $6.5 million to build fiber up to the Grand Canyon School District. And ComNet, the company that built the fiber, they built, I think, 96 strands to the Grand Canyon, knowing that the school district needed 2. And after they built that fiber, after that they went and started selling to Tucson and all the communities and towns along the way, which is a perfect way. I mean, they of course paid for the additional strands, but the bulk of the cost is in the project management, the digging, all that was underground, tons and tons of rock. If you're driving up to the Grand Canyon, you'll notice all the rock chunks laying on the side of the road that we dug up during that project. So it's a great investment for the whole state. So that $5 million will go a long way for us.
Okay, thanks. Any quick questions from Mylon before we get back to John? Okay, thanks, Mylon. Glad you could join us. I think that was very helpful. So John, going back to you. Sorry about that.
No problem. No problem. So I uploaded some information. You guys can digest that on your own or afterwards and stuff. Not take up too much time here. So like I said, we're infrastructure. Most of our work is rooted in telecommunications and utility. work with probably 90% of it in the telecommunications space. So we provide telecommunications across various platforms, wireless, that's every array from traditional mod sites, first time installs, to small cell sites, to DAS builds, as well as quite a few big sporting events and complexes as well. Usually covered under our DAS scenarios. Aside from that, we provide, or like I said, I'm one of the two owner operators here with Telesite. My business partner, Justin Mock, runs the construction side of it and acts as the CEO. I do mostly over the engineering side of the house and the professional services, and oversee the business development side of it. So I've been on here since I think August, Steve, when you reached out and we started communicating, and been just sitting back and, getting a general scope of what's going on in the calls and just listening in. Over the last little bit with the FCC release on the map, there's a lot of inconsistencies, and it really, for us on the service provider side of it, give you a little bit of insight from that end of it. It does us little to no good. I mean, we're putting out an FCC is putting out a map. Essentially, you got to plug in, you got to have connectivity to, enter in your address to ping it to basically show. So, I mean, who they're putting it out to really isn't getting reached for the most part. So what we did is we kind of took the FCC data, and I do this quite a bit. So internally here, all the FCC registered cell sites and towers, anything that's a vertical structure in the structure in the US, we have, proprietary maps that we've already gone through. We've pulled out, almost 1 million towers that we have in our database here. Every carrier, we have all their infrastructure in a GIS environment and stuff, and then we layer that. So what we do is we layer all that work, so it gives us a bigger picture. So what Kelly's going to share with you today, Kelly heads up our GIS division. He's an urban planner and GIS graduate from ASU. And then on the flip side of it, we have, I got Will Anslow as well. Will is a senior outside plant project manager for me. He's worked with a variety of companies and different individuals and entities here in the state. Will's worked with me and for me going back to 2016 and previously to Telesite, and he's been on board since. In addition to that, I'm going to end up having Will probably jump in on the tribal land stuff, just given the Navajo status and things like that. Gil Tosi here is another PM that's Navajo as well, that runs the biggest projects that we have here in the state for Arizona. They run a lot of our E-rate projects. We did the Phoenix Union School District project tying in 26 of the schools. We did full engineering, fiber engineering, all the construction staking, the field work, and all the permitting for that here a little, probably I think it was 42 miles of fiber that we laid there. And we also did the Yuma Regional Medical Facilities in Yuma about 2 years back. Both were E-rate projects. So we have familiarity on that as well. So what we have done is we've taken the FCC map and we flipped it. So for us, all I really want to see is the depreciated areas that don't have any service or under 100 meg service. And that's all that really matters to me from a service provider for the most part. That's the nuts and bolts of what I'm looking for. So Kelly's put together a map that'll give you guys, he'll go through that. It's narrated, he'll pause it and answer some questions. If we could hold most of the questions towards the end, I think some of the narration in this here will probably answer some of it. And so I'll let Kelly go through, and then at the end of it, we'll take on some questions and stuff like that. Go ahead, Kelly.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
We can hear you.
Okay, yeah, sorry. As soon as I start sharing my screen right now, and it's freaking out. Is it blanking like in and out for you guys right now? Yeah, okay.
Kelly, it looks like you're frozen. Oh, there you go.
They're really good at staying still.
That's that damn broadband.
Techs always have tech problems.
Make
As
sure
I
you have
tell
the office location in that map there, John.
as I tell people, techs have the worst computers because we're fixing everybody else's.
Hey, Kelly, if it's easier to share it by opening right straight from the chat, that might be easier.
Hey, am I back on live here?
Yep, you're back.
All right. Yeah, what an unfortunate time for a computer to take a crash, right?
Yes.
Okay, 1 second.
Hey, Kelly, I can open it right straight from the chat that I shared it with. No problem.
Can you guys see it right now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, no, is my entire computer, John. All right, so what we're looking at right here, like John was kind of getting at before all that happened, was an isolated shot at Arizona here of essentially all the data that we've either acquired along the time or public data out there. And we are looking at essentially broadband scores according to the FCC that are classified 0 to 99. And right now we are looking at block groups. When we zoom in a little bit further here, we can see it go down into the block level, which is obviously smaller. And for a little bit of reference here as well, we have a private school there and a public school there. So if I just click on a random block group right here, it lets you know that this block group in Yavapai County has a broadband score of 50. It gives you a small summary right here of basically saying 100 is an acceptable score according to the FCC. It says the down up speed and the method. It gives you a little bit of stats about the county, and then it also gives you demographic breakdown in this block group right here as well. So if we zoom into an area up here that would go into, now we can see the actual block themselves, and it gives you the same pop-up here as well. So this area right here is totally unserved with a broadband score of 36.
For reference, guys, what you're seeing in the red is all going to be, that is what the FCC determines as underserviced right now.
Yep, and then you can click in like the black here still on this map, and it'll tell you it's basically served. But so we just isolated it to the red areas only, and it's underserved. So it's showing you only 0 to 99, and we'll get even closer up here. So we got different schools here in Williams, elementary school there, up where Will, my coworkers, is at. I mean, you can see there's a lot of areas up there where, like right here, the broadband score is 0. And it's like, I don't know, obviously not walking distance to school, but it seems like it. So it's sad, to be honest. And John, did you want me to pull up the other one with the pie charts on the pop-ups?
Yeah, go ahead.
So this map here is based on American Community Survey.
Hey, Kelly, this is Mylan. Are you taking the FCC data and then overlaying your data and displaying the combination?
Yep, yeah, so it's a combination of work that we've done previously as well as FCC data, which obviously we don't get a lot of stuff like any say in that.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, you're all good. So then right here, we're looking at ACS data, and instead of giving a broadband score like we were just looking at here, it's essentially the same layout, but on here it's giving more of a household look. So when we look right here in this census tract 21, it's saying 257 households plus or minus 93 have no internet connection, and you can get that same data as you look over the pie chart. Here we're showing everything because like there's no broadband score to filter out, but if we wanted to, we could say like this number right here has to be at least 1,500. There has to be at least 1,500 to show up on the map. But these are just a couple of examples of the type of data that we have and we can pull and be able to visualize it in a map like this.
Want to go back to the other map, Kelly?
Yeah.
So window in, zoom right in.
Is that anywhere?
Yep. So like I said, what we have done is, what you've asked Mylan is, we have taken the FCC information basically and kind of flipped it and reversed it. Like I said, so we're not blindly entering an address. We're seeing the results of the addresses that are already inputted, which the FCC has in their records. So we've extracted it, dumped it back into the map, and repurposed the FCC information so that we see the gaps in the service areas. And in those gaps, we can actually go into them, which is all the red areas, and we can actually pull into it, zoom into it, and actually break it down into whatever groups that we want to. If we want to, we can also go in. There's a lot of stuff that we can do at this level. We can go in and actually do a circumference around a school, or we can put a school limits in, or districts limits in, and we can pull every address within that within that school district that shows in the unserved areas. So as you can see, I mean, that would give us a list of addresses, et cetera, that may go to a certain school district, but fall outside or are underserved as well. So that's one of them. The map that Kelly just showed, where we can click on and it'll show you the same polygon, and it'll give you the breakdown on what service is there, et cetera. We can overlay those maps as well. There's a ton of stuff that we can do so that we can drive down to the FCC non-serviced areas or underserviced areas, and then we can have the component of the other data below it from this map and show us how many residents are made up in that area, and then what the breakdowns are. And I mean, you can see everything from the demographics to everything. So it gives us a little bit of insight on it, a little bit more information. From that, we can also pull a list of addresses by whatever polygon, from an unserved area, from a block, from a census. We can do whichever we want. Once we have the addresses, obviously, you know, that gives us a lot of information as well. The biggest thing, like I said, on these maps is the FCC is trying to get to the people that, you know, how do you contact the people that don't have internet service to get them to put their address in online just to ping, you know, to ping the FCC. So I've been playing with this. Like I said, I've been in the telecommunications for about 25 years now. I've done a lot of fiber to the prem and a lot of build outs from, you know, worked a lot in DC and the Virginia, Northern Virginia markets and stuff as well. In those markets and stuff, we did a lot of this work going back, I mean, early 2004, 2002 for the FTTP work, which really started utilizing this type of data that we're seeing now and utilizing still 20 some years later. The data that we have and are able to grab, it can be flipped around, like I said, so many different ways. We really would, you know, what I'm going to look at is comments that come back and the feedback that comes back, so we can narrow that down to the group that we have here and see if we can target those questions, maybe narrow it down and find where the best that, you know, we can work with this map here to feedback to, you know, Arizona and to this state here, trying to get some type of better service or a better method of just determining these unserved areas and getting the word out there and back to the FCC to get the accuracies there and have a proper, accurate map for the state. I'm not sure. I mean, I know years ago that the state, you could go to the school districts and blindly go to the school districts and ask the school to give addresses for all their students. Now, it would be a blind. It was not an address, like doesn't have information as far as names, etc. But it provides an address. And some of the enrollment forms years ago used to provide and take those addresses every year. And I know we used to see them on for the broadband stuff. I did a lot of work with BTOP reviews through Booz Allen Hamilton back in the day. And that was one of the classifications where I know a lot of the mapping came from for fixing problems like this here, trying to get addresses. And that's what they did. They went to the school districts, and the school provided back a list of addresses for every student without any names associated, etc. Just addresses. And those went back in and were populated back into the map. That way we end up getting all the schools in the state. That was Virginia at the time, but we started getting all the schools for the state and having an actual legit map with addresses.
I can tell you they're a little more protective of that information now.
Yeah.
But Jonathan, I would agree that once you have that level of detail, because I work with several schools and several school districts. Once you have that level of detail, you can do an amazing set of calculations. And I've literally processed about 12 million data points that I've generated as a result from having that level of granularity. And it's amazing what you can do once you've got that level of intelligence. What you've got here, though, is an amalgamation of a variety of sources that are publicly available, but you don't see typically it used in this fashion. But there's lots of information that you can drill through, and I applaud the work that you've done to be able to get it into an appropriate format. Because the tools are not necessarily the easiest to work with, but once you've got it in this type of format, then you can wash, rinse, and repeat a lot in terms of just reproducing the effort.
Absolutely. And like I said, there's I don't want to use names.
Are you connected through APIs, or are you connected, or is this just that data that you've downloaded and then added to your maps?
I believe
so they have the APIs available. I've downloaded the SCC data because we had to use that in conjunction with the data that we have internally at Telesite. So using the API would have just been like streamlined, just one source. But because we have multiple sources on this, I had to download that and put it in there as a shape file.
Their data is pretty complex. Census data is even worse.
Yeah, absolutely. It was nice though on the API. It came with on the downloaded shapefile API. It came with the demographic breakdown in the census tract. Otherwise, I was gonna have to go down the rabbit hole of the census stuff too.
We were putting some data together in the COVID transitionary phase down to a neighborhood, zip code, and county level, and kind of layering some of the things. I think it's super, super interesting that you're drilling down to Wi-Fi. I actually just did this whole exercise for all these counties across Ohio and gave it a 1 to 5 rating because I want to lay in civic health and engagement, levels as well. And I think so, the Reality Health Games is, to me, a way to put a competition in place so that we know exactly what the gaps are and then go compare. I saw on your site that you had other states. You're not just Arizona. So you basically would have the ability to have this data and this map for all the states, or just the ones that you're licensed on?
We have it for the US.
So I think it would be awesome to get with you offline and say like, hey, how can we kind of like partner and like showcase this as a Reality Health type of component?
Absolutely. Like I said, I mean, there's a lot more here that offline, like I said, that's why I wouldn't mind having Kelly. I know you're talking to Steve as far as the mapping group and stuff. I wouldn't mind having Kelly part of that mapping group just because he brings exactly that. I mean, we have combined with this, we have every wireless tower, vertical structure that's on the Arizona map as well. We have, a ton of other work as well that's on here and stuff that we have proprietary for us. We could share it with you guys and stuff and go through it and stuff, and better stream it and pull out what we need for you guys.
Let me look at the cell towers real quick here.
Yeah.
So, and Jonathan, I'm not sure if you're aware, but I know that, I believe I'm not positive, I think each county inside of the state has the GIS mapping divisions as well. And they offer some good overlays of what the land itself looks like. So we started talking about transport and getting access to specific areas. We could get a better understanding also of what the actual ground is. What type
Absolutely.
of, that's, I was formerly with Coconino County, and we had a lot of good GIS data about what was where. So when we were talking to ISPs to develop middle mile, those were very, very important pieces of
Yeah,
information.
that's kind of our language. Like I said, I mean, my purpose of going out and getting this is because it makes my product that I do for the carriers, et cetera, that much better and more accurate for the state here. Like I said, we've done a ton of, I mean, Kelly, if you just want to share just the visuals, for the folks here, just the Phoenix area and stuff of the job hits that we've done just in telecommunications. We've done a lot through wireless for small cell, all this stuff, smart city stuff. We're doing the kiosk stuff for you guys and stuff as well. And in the city of Phoenix and stuff now. There's a lot of stuff here that we do in telecommunications that, it's not privy to this call here necessarily, or this component of the call, but it all ties together. I mean, the Verizon One Fiber project here, we're the doing majority of the engineering and field and permitting work on that for the state of Arizona for the last 2 years. That's a huge fiber network. We're not only doing that, we're tying in all the laterals to the small cells, the existing Verizon towers. We're doing the same thing for, AT&T, everyone else as well. So, but we just thought it would be kind of cool to share it, show what we're doing and how we utilize the FCC data. I've been using it for years. Like I said, flipping it, going in and pulling the records instead of doing a data entry, we pull it out. It's all public record. So it's able to be shared and utilized, et cetera. So.
Cool.
Okay, any questions or comments?
Just one thing, when it comes to rural areas, and I know there's a lot of high need areas in the rural areas, and I think you just showed several examples.
Yeah.
What about any sort of calculations between the addresses that are on file and other structures within the area, or any sort of like GPS calculations? One thing that just came to mind when I was thinking about this recently was that a lot of rural school districts are busing students tremendous distances. Those addresses might not necessarily be listed. It's like, third post past this corner, right? So it could be, but they still need to know where to go.
Exactly.
So they may actually be recording GPS locations or such. And so doing any sort of cross tabulation between the addresses and another data set, yes, you'd have to try and work out how to get access to that other data set. But I'm also wondering about the addresses that are on file in that area, and then doing some sort of like visual mapping cross overlay and say, hey, we've got one address on file for this area, but when we look at it from a satellite imagery standpoint, there's actually more structures and more things around that area. So that might, so I know it's incredibly difficult. I'm not asking for a solution, but I think there's the kernel of ideas there about how to do it.
Absolutely. So
programmatically, it's not easy though.
It's not. So essentially the best way would be to do it, is a step-by-step. Obviously we can find, we're looking first and foremost for the, underserved areas. So, we can narrow that down first. And then, that's the first deal, narrow it down, then looking within that area. I would look at it more or less, if there was an RFP or something like that out for that area that was going to be posted and stuff, I would look for that RFP at that time, more or less. That's when I would define those boundaries. Back in the old days, I call them the old days, we used to define them by the copper distribution areas, right? The district DAs and stuff. And then we, from those, create fiber distributions or the FDA boundaries and stuff. Now, we could go back in from the school, find the underserved areas, build out what we would look at as far as as far as what the network would look like, where we would place a hub type of deal. From that, you would have your boundaries of what your network limitations would be. So you would kind of get an all hands around everything that would be inclusive at that time. That typically on most of the RFPs that I've seen in the past and stuff, whether, E-rate, BTOP, usually require a lot of that information and stuff upfront, going in and calculating. A lot of it's upfront provided to you, but you got to do your due diligence and prove it out, right? So, I mean, that's where I would say that would be key. To do it at a larger level, you'd be chasing yourself for the next 5 years and probably only hitting, whatever remote areas that are actually being targeted to build out. So that's the best way I could kind of put it.
If I could add, Paul, I agree with what you're saying. Just maybe a recommendation. I was working last with Starlink and SpaceX, working on mobile access, putting it on their school buses so that we could get to these remote areas. We still had students that were driving an hour and a half just to get to their school bus, which drives another hour and a half to school. At the same time, it gives you a portion of the route. It gives you, there may be other data sets that are available, should those private companies be willing to share that. But there may be other avenues of approach, maybe even not from, maybe that data from a GPS perspective would be owned by Starlink or SpaceX. However, there may be data that you collect also from the schools themselves. They may be able to offer some of the data sets as to where that GPS is if they have.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, I've found school district boundaries are usually serviced because you have a common tie point being a school. At least you can get the kids that are busing to the schools and stuff. So usually you can get the district. Then obviously from that, you have to look at what students are shipping in from outside of the district. Like you're saying, it's definitely doable. It's communicating, obviously you get to a point where you only get so far and you'd have to pick up the phone and contact the school and talk to somebody or have a direct head there and have those relationships and stuff. But like I said, with the group of people that we have on here, I'm just looking at the group of people here for the last 5 months that I've been just sitting back and listening. There's a lot of smart people on here. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to find a way around it and get to it. So it's gonna take some time, but
Yeah, and then you look at the topology of the area too and find out, hey, that's actually a mountain there, or there's a big forest there, and then that's a whole nother gamut. But this is why this area it's so interesting, because it is got a depth of complexity, and unless you get into that depth, I think we've all seen people who've said, we can provide X, but they've just looked at some pretty rudimentary information, and then they get out to the field and they go, oh, there's a canyon right there, or there's a pretty big hill there, and we can't get around that hill. So, but anyway, no, this is great. Thanks for the presentation.
No problem. Like I said, there's a lot of the telecommunication groups. We're kind of fighting against them. In all respect, right? Like I said, you have every one of them that wants to be as helping as what they can. But when there's underserved areas, T-Mobile, AT&T, Verizon, insert name of, nobody wants to tip their hat as far as who's in there and who's not and when they're getting in. There's limited space, whether it's in the ground, lease area acquisition for towers, etc. There's only so much space, and it's cheapest to get in first, typically. So to have your pick of your location, and that's why a lot of these companies on the telecommunications side are so, I don't want to say negligent, but they're put off as far as providing information. Telecommunication companies here, they have, US West Quest here, the records that they have over the years through Lumen, CenturyLink, Cox, it'd be pretty hard pressed to say that everyone here that provides service in the state of Arizona couldn't pull and put every address in there almost.
Okay,
Everyone has their own secret sauce.
Yep.
We're going to need to wrap up. We're already over time and want to cover a couple quick things. But John, thank you. You and your team,
absolutely.
You guys are doing some great stuff. And his contact information is in the email I sent, notice of meeting, and will be in the follow-up information also. So you're more than welcome to contact him. Just a couple of quick things though. Mauricio, you put a comment in the chat. You want to just share that real quickly?
Well, I think I'm just preaching to the choir where I said that in rural Arizona, there's not gonna be a lot of addresses. They might have PO boxes. So I just wanted to mention that I think people have already talked about how of a challenge that could be as well.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. So just a couple of quick things. Janet, I apologize. We haven't gotten to you. I know you have an event coming up. Do you want to just do that real quickly, and anything else that you want to share?
Yes, thank you so much. Mala and I are so very excited that our second telehealth library pilot is having a community health day this Saturday. And we'll be having the opportunity for people to have their eyes screened. The Lions Club is coming. Chicanos por la Causa is having folks, a volunteer come help us with ACP signups. Mammograms, it's crazy. There's a lot going on. Local radio station. Desert Sonita Community Health Center does an annual event, and we're very happy to have the opportunity to demonstrate our telehealth library technology. So that's one event. I also put in the chat, the American Telemedicine Association is happening the first week of March, and I have a discount coupon code for anybody who would be interested in potentially attending the ATA this year. It's in San Antonio, so that makes it hopefully feasible. It's only a 12-hour drive. I'm thinking about driving. The other thing I put into chat is there's a really great new Arizona Health Area Education Center, AHEC, and it's the American Indian AHEC. And there's nothing better than thinking about how we can reach all 22 federally recognized tribes. I don't think very many people here could name more than 10 of them. And we're planning, along with the Arizona Diabetes Coalition, a great conference that will hopefully touch all of the tribes. And we're looking forward to planning something in October. So I did put the contact information in chat. The new director of the American Indian AHEC is Jeff Axtell. Some of you may know him from IT healthcare work he did up in Northern Arizona for a couple of different organizations. And so those are my announcements. Thank you, Steve.
Sure. Sorry, we kind of ran out of time. Holly, I don't know if you're still there. Did you have anything else? I know Mala's not here today.
No, the main thing I had was the same thing Janet just announced. And notice that Aaron put a note in the chat also about representation at that event by our Connect Arizona Digital Navigators.
Okay. And Aaron, did you have anything else that you want to add?
Just that, we're excited to be a part of that event as well. Thank you.
Okay, I think, was anybody else have any announcements or anything they want to share before we end for today? Well, I appreciate those of you who have hung in here with us. I know a number of folks have dropped off, but a lot of stuff to cover, a lot of stuff happening. So thank you all for being here. All of this stuff, you'll get the chat and all the other stuff like I always do sometime in the near future. You'll get the summary of the meeting and the video and all that kind of good stuff. So with that, thank you all, and we'll hopefully see many of you on Thursday at the summit.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, we're done. Thank you all.
Thank you, Steve.
Hey, Jonathan. Hey, oh, you're still on mute.